Cool. Hi everyone, my name is Reyna, and today we're going to be breaking down just a few foundational poses. So we'll be looking at tabletop, we'll be looking at downward facing dog, and we'll be looking at tadasana or mountain pose. And I really like to start with these poses as far as breaking things down because they really set you up to have a strong, kind of substantial foundation for a lot of postures within the practice, and you're going to be moving through these things fairly often. So it's important to get comfortable with them and to become familiar with them. Beautiful. So let's start with tabletop. Oh, and this is my partner, the Green Wizard. We're going to call him the Wiz today. Beautiful. So tabletop. We want to start with our knees about hips distance apart. So I'll have him sit back onto his shins, take his fists together, two fists, and then slide those fists in between your knees, and you should have a snug-ish fit. Two fists is about hips distance for most people. Beautiful. And then he'll slide his hands out and return back to his tabletop. Good. From here, we want our hands about shoulder distance, and so he's going to spin his hands in, so the fingers are facing each other. Sweet. And then so he's a little bit wider than kind of the general population of what we're looking for. So he's going to walk his hands in a little bit. And for some people, it'll be middle fingertips about touching, maybe a little bit further. He's got pretty wide shoulders, so he's a little bit further than the tips touching exactly. Beautiful. Then he'll spin his hands back out. Good. And with his hands, he's going to try to take a little grip of the ground. So he's going to press the hands into the earth, and then as if he's trying to pull a little chunk out. Good. Staying active in the hands, protecting the wrists. From here, he'll shift his weight forward just slightly so that when he looks down, he's not looking in between his hands, but slightly in front of his hands. Good. A small hug of the belly to the spine and just bringing the core in, because even when we move through something like cat-cow and we say drop the belly, we're not dropping the engagement. We're just moving the belly towards the ground. Good. Spine nice and long when he's in neutral. Again, looking out in front of him, not cranking the head up, not tucking it down. And his kind of natural position is to have the tops of his feet down, which is totally fine, just as long as you're making contact, which he is. Good. And even he can kind of wiggle out, and he made a little more. So just finding those points of contact, or if you'd like, you just show tucking the toes under. Good. And so this might be more comfortable for some people. It's not for me. I don't think it is for you either, which is probably why it wasn't his first choice. So he's going to untuck his toes. Good. And this is his tabletop. Super strong, super sturdy. Good. Take a round of cat-cow for us just so we can see you move through it. Good. And so you can see his spine is moving, his scapula are moving, his pelvis is moving. We'll take one more round, but his arms and his hands are staying the same. His feet are grounded, his knees are grounded, and he is here and active and stable in his base. Beautiful. Do you need a moment to rest? No. Okay, cool. So keeping his spine just like this. He has a nice cow spine here, a little back bend. I'm going to ask him to turn his hands out just slightly. Beautiful. Good. He's pushing the ground away. Now he's going to tuck the toes, lift his knees, and shift his hips back. And he's going to come into downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. And so here you can see he has a nice bend in the knees. His hips are nice and high. He's making space for himself. And his lower body, despite shifting weight, really stayed pretty similar to where it was. Now his heels are off the ground, and that's awesome. Your heels never have to touch the ground, and you're still doing yoga. Good. So he's got a nice deep bend in the knee. He's keeping that back bend, and he's really creased here at the hips. So this is almost like a forward fold. Good. His core is engaged. He's hugging his belly in. He's engaged on the sides of his body. He's pressing the earth away, and his shoulders are neutral. He's not trying to slide them down the back. He's not trying to hug them towards the ears. They're just at a nice neutral spot. We're going to come in, and he's going to wrap his triceps under. and his biceps move forward from the shoulder. So he's externally rotating the shoulder. He's pressing into the thumbs. Cool, come down to rest. You can come into child's pose if you'd like. Awesome. And so you saw with the Wiz's downward facing dog, it was long, it was lean, and it was active. He has a lot of range in the front of his shoulders, and he has a really long torso. And so if he wanted, he could easily just kind of like dip the chest towards the earth and really hang out in the flexibility he has in his shoulders. But he doesn't, because he's staying active and engaged. There's nothing wrong with a vacation dog, as some of my teachers call it. It's nice if that's not your default. Cool. And so one more thing as far as setting up your downward facing dog. Wiz, when you're ready, will you please come into a plank position for me? So figuring out the length of your dog can be really challenging. So the Wiz is in a plank. From his plank, I'm going to ask him to shift right back into downward facing dog. So we saw that he had to step his feet in, and it was a little step, but if you're stepping your feet in a lot, chances are your plank is a little too long. You're kind of stretching the body a bit and you're not really engaging where you need to, and we'll go through plank at a different time, but will you roll forward back into plank for me? Okay, now shift back to downward facing dog. Cool, and so you saw he was in plank, he moved into his down dog, he adjusted from there, and now he moved back into plank. When he shifted back again, he didn't need to readjust his feet. So your plank and your down dog should measure up roughly, and you ideally won't have to move your feet or hands around very much when moving back and forth from plank to downward facing dog. Awesome, and so the last pose we're going to work through is the standing pose, mountain pose, or tadasana. And there's quite a few ways to do it, but I'm just going to show you the way that I feel is accessible for more bodies and the most bodies. All right, the Wiz, you bring your feet hips distance apart, please. It's just Wiz. And so you can see his feet are hips distance and a little bit wider, and that's totally fine. So you can always measure yourself by taking those two fists and sliding them in between your arches. And that's about hips distance for many bodies, but find your comfortable, stable stance. Beautiful. So lift all 10 toes, please. Start to circle yourself around the feet. Cool, so I'm having him just move around all four corners of his feet, and he's really looking for the center. And so when we say all four corners, I'm talking, if your foot was a rectangle, without the toes, you have a corner at the top of the ball and on each side of your heel. Cool, so once he's found his center, he's gonna come and stop the movement, come back to the middle, and then he'll lay all 10 toes down. And even when he lays his toes down, the arches of his feet still have a little lift as if the toes are up. So if you feel like your feet aren't engaged, lift your toes and try to move through some of your poses like that. Good, and then we'll start to activate the leg. So just a gentle activation in the quad, like he's trying to pull the kneecap up towards his hip bones. Now that's obviously not gonna happen, but we can dream. Cool. Glutes turn on just slightly, little activation in the hamstrings. Beautiful. And then I'm going to have him bring one hand to his lower belly, his pelvic region, and one hand to his lower back. The back of his hand is there. And he's going to start just tilting his tailbone back and forth. So sticking his butt out like he's in cow pose, and then tucking it under like he's in cat pose. And he's really focusing on moving just from his pelvis. Because with our tadasana, we want our pelvis in neutral, and it's really helpful to understand this kind of, okay, my pelvis is tilted back, it's under me, it's neutral, and just starting to feel what these different shapes feel like. So once he's found what his neutral is, he's gonna stop, release the hands by the sides, get a gentle pull of the lower belly up, his belly button in, And then as if I was tightening a corset, he's gonna try to hug everything in, this whole core container, not just his stomach, not just his belly button, but this really whole core container here. Beautiful. On an inhale, squeeze the shoulders up. Beautiful. Exhale, relax them down. Sliding the shoulder blades down the back as if they were kind of like an elevator and they were sliding down towards the lower back. Good. Palms face out. And we have some energy through the arms, through the hands. Feeling really kind of broad and proud from shoulder to shoulder without letting the ribs flare out. So really staying stable all along this front line of the body. Wiggle the crown of the head a little closer to the sky. Beautiful. And here we have him in his mountain pose, his tadasana. He's active, he's engaged. His knees have a small bend to them. He's breathing. And it looks great. Cool, you can relax.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Do you looking at the camera or just doing my stare off in the distance?
You can look at the camera. The stare off the distance thing is funny. Okay, well, that is all we have for you today. Thank you to the Green Wizard. And if you all have any questions, if you need something clarified, or if there are poses that you would like to work on for next month's little workshop, please comment or message me. Let me know, because this Patreon is for you all to learn. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being here, and I will see you next time.